Hello friends, I'm the Reverend Teri Peterson, minister of St. John's in Zurich. Today is Tuesday, the 28th of September, and it is 5 o'clock, so it's time for a bit of Wine and the Word. Today it's a rosé called Inspiration, and I could use some, so I've just got a wee glass, hoping that a little bit will be a lot of inspiration for today. I hope you are having a great day today. We always begin by sharing a bit of our high and low points of the day as we transition from one part of the day to the next, looking back over our day and seeing what has happened and what might still be to come in the evening. So the high point of my day today is that when I went to bed last night, I anticipated that I was going to have to walk up to the high school this morning in rain and cold. But what actually happened is that the sun was shining. So it was still a little bit chilly, but I had on just a very light jacket and I walked up with no problem. It was a beautiful morning and it has continued to be lovely out. It's sunny even now, so I'm very pleased about today's weather. It has just turned out to really be much better than it was anticipated. And that's good for someone who walks everywhere. The low point of my day today was a phone call from a funeral director who initially gave me a name of someone who has not in fact died, but would have been very shocking if it had been that person. And just the way that they said it and then paused, I thought that this person had died sort of unexpectedly, and the first I was hearing of it was from the funeral director, and honestly, I thought I might have a heart attack, and I screamed, "What?" in the phone so loud that I might have accidentally made her go deaf. So, that was not the shining moment of my day. Thankfully, that was not the case, and the person that she originally said is actually okay still, so that's great. Nowhere near death as far as I'm aware, so that's good news. That's the high and low points of my day, a little insight into some of the things that happen in minister life. Whatever the high and low points of your own day, I hope you will share them with someone, whether that's sending me a message or phoning a friend or someone else from the church, telling a neighbor, telling someone else that you live with. Sharing our lives in this way matters. Looking back over our day matters. Seeing where we experience the presence of God and where we have missed God, wishing for more of God's presence. All of that is important. So there you have it. Today, we are going to bridge the gap a little bit between last Sunday and this coming Sunday. So last Sunday, we read about Moses at the burning bush. And most of us know what happens after that, in that Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh says no. And then there are plagues and more plagues and more plagues. Locusts and water turning to blood and boils and gnats and all sorts of terrible things. Until finally the 10th plague is the death of the firstborn. And throughout the land of Egypt, all the people and animals who are firstborn die in the night. And it says there's not one household that's left unaffected. Of course, there wouldn't be. And at that point, Pharaoh and the Egyptians essentially kick the Israelites out. They give them all their jewelry and say, "Get out of here. Go away. We don't want to be plagued by you and your God anymore." And so they run off toward the Red Sea. God parts the sea and the people walk through on dry land. And the Egyptian army, who had changed their mind and tried to follow them, end up drowned. So that part is in all the films, right? That's the bit that we know from the Moses movies, the 10 Commandments and the Prince of Egypt and all of that. But then after that, I think, is when the story really gets interesting. So in Exodus chapter 15, we read about the songs that the people sing when they have come out of the Red Sea on to the other side. And then it says this, beginning in verse 22, and I'm reading from the Common English Bible. "Then Moses had Israel leave the Red Sea and go out into the Shur desert. They traveled for 3 days in the desert and found no water. When they came to Marah, they couldn't drink Marah's water because it was bitter. That's why it was called Marah. The people complained against Moses, "What will we drink?" Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord pointed out a tree to him. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. The Lord made a regulation and a ruling there, and there he tested them. The Lord said, "If you are careful to obey the Lord your God, do what God thinks is right, pay attention to his commandments, and keep all his regulations, then I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians. I am the Lord who heals you." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the water. So this story says that there are thousands, tens of thousands of people and their livestock who have all come out of Egypt through the sea, and now they are in the desert, in the wilderness, in the Sinai Peninsula. And they go for 3 days without seeing any springs or wells or streams or rivers or anything like that. And that's a pretty significant problem when you are in the desert, because of course they will have come with some supplies, but 3 days is probably about all the water they can carry for that number of people and animals. So it's no wonder they are concerned about what to do. And then they finally come to a pool of water, and it's bitter. Now, we don't know exactly what bitter water means, but it wasn't drinkable, whatever the problem was. Perhaps it was salty, or it had too much of some mineral in it. And so they complain, listen carefully, they complain against Moses, because apparently they think of Moses as the one who has brought them here. Never mind what they saw just 3 days ago, when it was the pillar of God's presence that protected them from the Egyptians, that drove back the wind and the waves and brought a path through the sea. All of that is forgotten because now they're thirsty and they're desperate. And so they turn their attention to the human at the head of their tribes. And that human takes the brunt of all of their fear and their anxiety and their desperation. And Moses does exactly what any leader does, really. He takes all of that and he turns to God and says, "What do we do now?" Like, God's the one who brought them here, and Moses remembers that, but the people don't. So when Moses prays to God, thankfully, at that moment, he's also listening and paying attention to what God is showing him. So when God points out the tree and says, "Throw the branch or the wood into the water, it will become sweet," we don't know what kind of tree that was either, or what on earth that could possibly have done. Scientifically, that might be possible or might not. It might be one of the early biblical miracles of this type. But in any case, finally, they have water to drink. But again, it looks to the people like it was Moses who figured that out, because they won't have seen him praying. They won't have heard God's voice. God spoke to Moses, not to all of them. So in some sense, the people have just learned that what they did works. They complained against Moses, and Moses fixed the problem. They didn't see the intermediate step. That's going to be important later on. So I think that this is a fascinating thing for us to remember. Oh, it's so bright. It's a fascinating thing for us to remember whenever we are complaining about our leaders, to think about whether it's the leader themselves who actually has the power and control over the situation that we are complaining about, or if there is something bigger at play. In this case of this story, of course, God is the one who has brought the people this far and the one who will continue to lead them on. It's God who turns the water from bitter to sweet. It's God who leads them to this amazing campsite with It's 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, like a place of shade and rest and plenty. But they don't see that. What they see is the leader who's following God and leading the people, the one who stands in the middle. Now, when we look at our own sort of political leaders, I think we want for those people to be listening to God and to follow the right thing to do, to lead us, to stand in the middle between God's leading and our complaining. But even when they're not, even when they're not in a religious sense, following God's way, they are still in the middle, right? Our political leaders are put there, maybe not by God, but by us. And the power is diffuse. It's not in one person. So when we see one person that we might like to complain against, we should probably think about the bigger picture as well. Just step back from that and look slightly broader and see where else we might be able to go to talk about the situation we're in. In a religious institution, the same is true, right? Our leaders are in the middle. They are not God. They are between God and the people, trying to discern God's voice and then lead the people in that direction. And when we complain against them, we are kind of complaining at the wrong person, like at the middle management. Unless our complaint is, you are not listening to God's way, we hear God's voice differently, and so we need for you to be more faithful in your prayer life to lead us more faithfully. And that is a thing that can happen. There are definitely religious leaders who get so busy and caught up in all of the to-do list and all the meetings and all the everything that we're supposed to get done that they forget to attend to their own spiritual life. And so they don't get a chance to listen for where God is leading. And that is a real problem for them and for the communities that they lead. So we do need to be sure that we are encouraging and nurturing and insisting that our spiritual leaders do this, that they spend time talking to God and listening to God, even if that means that perhaps they aren't getting all the tasks done all the time. Sometimes it's okay for us to camp by the 12 springs of water and the 70 palm trees and have a rest. And sometimes we need to be a part of getting there, not only insisting on the middle person getting there. So that's a whole lot of story for a short little bit of text, but I just have been thinking about this sort of middleman experience that Moses is having and how people forget so quickly that he is not God, that he's in between the people and God, and that can be a really difficult place to be. And that's true for leaders of all kinds. So that's my thought for today that will get us on toward Sunday's reading. So I hope that whets your appetite a little bit. That's funny because the Sunday reading is about manna in the wilderness. So we'll be hungering for that part of the story, just as the people were hungering in the wilderness. And it's communion on Sunday and our harvest festival and our National Gift Day as well. So it's a big day in St. John. So I look forward to seeing you there. So let's take a moment to pray together. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this beautiful day that you have made. We give you thanks for calling us together as a community. We give you thanks for the people who lead us, who stand in between you and us and show your way to us. We ask that you would speak faithfully to them and open their ears and eyes to see and follow where you are leading, so that we too may see and follow where you want us to go. We ask in the name of Jesus the Christ. Amen. All right, friends, I hope you have a beautiful evening ahead. It's so sunny, I can't even look at the camera. And I will see you again soon. Until then, cheers and peace be with you.